So we've heard the closing arguments now in Erin Patterson's triple murder trial. The prosecution is saying she's lied about multiple things, and she also lied to the jury themselves when she gave evidence in this case. But her lawyer, Colin Mandy, says she's not on trial for being a liar. Erin Patterson's pleaded not guilty to murdering Don Patterson, Gail Patterson and Heather Wilkinson, and also to the attempted murder of Ian Wilkinson. Now they're the parents of her estranged husband, Simon Patterson, and also Simon's aunt and uncle, Heather and Ian Wilkinson. This case has been going now for 8 weeks. It's going to go into a 9th week. We've heard from more than 50 witnesses. The closing arguments come at the end of all the evidence from those witnesses. The prosecution and the defence both get their chance to sum up the matters before the jury. So the prosecution say that, look, there's enough evidence here for the jury to find beyond reasonable doubt that Erin Patterson committed these murders. They say she hosted at her house. She had complete control over those beef Wellingtons, that she picked the recipe, she bought all the ingredients. That recipe, which was supposed to be one single beef Wellington, she instead made individual beef Wellingtons. They said that was part of what she did to make sure she wasn't eating poisoned food while her guests were. They said there was enough evidence for the jury to find that she'd visited nearby townships in the weeks before the lunch to source death cap mushrooms, after she'd seen posts on a website that detailed that they were growing there. They said that they should also find Erin Patterson wasn't actually sick, but that she pretended to be unwell because she knew how suspicious that would look. Basically, the prosecution was saying to the jury, you've got all the evidence here. This is a jigsaw puzzle. It might not be completely clear which part fits, but as you start putting these pieces of evidence together, a picture is going to emerge, and that picture will make it clear to you that Erin Patterson is guilty of these murders. The defence, they actually used the jigsaw analogy against the prosecution in a way. They said, look, this isn't a jigsaw puzzle because when you buy a jigsaw puzzle, the picture's already on the box. And that's what the prosecution did. They got the jigsaw, they saw the picture on the box, which was Erin Patterson was guilty. They've been trying to jam puzzle pieces in to kind of fit that narrative. He said, you as a jury, you can't do that. You've got to go back, look at all these different pieces of evidence individually, work out what it shows you, and that will show you that she's not guilty. So they were basically saying, look, Erin Patterson has told lies. She's not on trial for that. Erin Patterson hasn't behaved well. She's not on trial for that. You might not even believe what Erin Patterson said when she was on the witness stand. You can put that aside as well. There's not enough evidence here before you to find her guilty beyond reasonable doubt. There were a couple of things they particularly honed in on. They said, look, you should find Erin Patterson did have death cap mushroom poisoning. It was just less severe. Different individuals have different toxic responses was the evidence that they'd heard earlier on in this trial. She weighed more than the other guests. She was younger than the other guests. And also she had given evidence that she'd eaten a lot of cake after the guests had left and thrown up. Sure, she wasn't as badly unwell as them, fatally unwell like they were, but she was unwell. He also said, some of the stuff that she's admitted, some of these lies around, the dehydrator and dumping it and telling police she didn't have it, they are all things that she did because she panicked. Her evidence is Simon pulled her aside in hospital, said, is this the dehydrator that, she later dumped? Was that what you used to poison my parents? She's saying from that moment, that's when she panicked, and that led to a series of lies and a series of things she's not proud of, but she admitted on the stand that she did because she was worried she was going to be unfairly blamed for this. Simon says that conversation never happened, but it's pretty central to the defence case that was the moment, in her lawyer's words, where the wheels started turning. She knew from that moment on that she was going to get blamed for what had happened to these people. The defence then kind of circled back and said to the jury, look, you can't use any of this stuff that's happened after the lunch to prove what her intention was before it. It's really important that you don't use this sort of hindsight reasoning, he called it, to think that, well, because she did all this stuff after the lunch that was wrong, that was lies, that was misleading, that you should find that her intention before the lunch was to kill these people. That's a seductive idea, but it's a really dangerous idea, and as a jury, you shouldn't be doing it. So court's not going to return until Tuesday, the 24th of June. At that point, Justice Christopher Beale will deliver his jury charge or directions. Now that's basically him explaining to them how they can use certain pieces of evidence, various questions of law, things they have to weigh up when it comes to them considering their verdict. That's going to take a minimum of 2 days, he's told them. So that means that at the very earliest, the jury will retire to consider its verdict on Wednesday afternoon. And once the jury does retire to consider their verdict, they have to reach a unanimous decision.